Alright, so if you're here watching this, it's maybe because you're a subscriber and you got a notification, and the way you get the notifications is hit the little bell at the bottom of the screen here next to the share and the subscribe button, okay? But if you weren't doing that and you just bounced into this video, thank you. I'm glad you found us. I want to show you, this is Charapita, which is a very, very interesting little tiny, amazing little hot pepper from Peru, and it grows wild in the Amazon. I'm in South Florida and I've learned my lesson, and I'm going to share with you how you can grow the plant in your climate. Now, the one thing about this plant that's really amazing is that it's super productive. You can see how many little peppers are growing on it. Now I have 3 of them out here. This one right here went through hell, and so did the others, but this one in particular went through hell. What I mean by that is it went through our summer here in Florida with a lot of rain and incredible heat, and I had them growing in full sun. So the first thing is, if you're in a climate like South Florida in the summer, you don't want to grow this in full sun. It's just too hot, okay? So what I did is, when I saw they were really suffering, they were turning yellow, the leaves were falling off, I kept having all kinds of issues, they were constantly wilting on me. What I did is I moved them to a place that had filtered light, and shortly, within a couple of weeks, they started to look better, okay? But this guy went through hell. He almost died, okay? I mean, this guy was like yellow to the point that I didn't think he had a shot. But little by little, with a little love and a little TLC, a little bit of fertilizer, a little bit of nutritional, being careful with the water, checking the pH and all that, we were able to get this one looking good as well. Also had to do quite a bit of pruning to get rid of a lot of the dead wood that was all over it. That heat just is a killer. Also, the humidity and the intense amount of rain that we had was not good. So let's talk a little bit about peppers in general. They do like to have water, but they also like to be able to dry out just a little bit, okay? They don't like to be too wet and they don't like to be too dry. So it's a kind of an in-between with a little bit of drying once in a while, okay? Now, one of the things that is important to understand is that you want to use a fertilizer that has some nitrogen in it, but you don't want to overdo it with the nitrogen. So anything in the ratio of a 6 to an 8, or maybe even up to a 10 is probably okay, but if you go above a 10, I don't recommend it. I like to stay between a 6 and an 8 as your N number, your first number on your nitrogen, on your fertilizer. Your phosphorus and your potassium, those can be higher in the middle and higher towards the end. So anything that's probably in the 20s or the 14s or the 15s in the middle, and something equal or a little higher or just about the same on the other end is very beneficial. I find that it works really, really good, okay? So low nitrogen, plenty of phosphorus, plenty of potassium, okay? There's plenty of fertilizers out there. And try to use an organic one, follow the instructions, and use it half strength. I like to do it every 2 weeks, half strength every 2 weeks, or full strength, as the directions say, once a month is probably not a bad idea during the period that the plant is growing. So actively growing, okay? If you get into a cool season and the weather's kind of much cooler and they're not growing much, or it's really cold, then you don't want to be fertilizing and stimulating a lot of growth, because then if you get a really bad cold snap, it's going to probably affect the foliage on your plant. However, pepper plants are pretty tough, so unless you live in a real northern climate where you're going to get some freezes, you're probably not going to have a problem. With respect to how to get seeds for the Charapita, pretty much right now you can order them online. There's lots of people that sell the Charapita peppers, and these little peppers are very, very slow growing. So when you plant those little seeds, 30 to 45 days before you even have any germination, and then it can take as long as 8 months before you actually have a little plant, and then a little longer before it starts flowering. So maybe a year. That's been my experience. Maybe you've had a much quicker result. If you have, let us know, okay? Now, one thing you can do is you can actually speed up the process of getting your plant production. In other words, propagating more plants is not that difficult. If you just have a nice mature plant, you can take cuttings and you can make more Charapita peppers. That's what this is. This is a cutting. A cutting is also known as a clone. That means that it's an exact duplicate of the mother plant. So that is already mature. This becomes mature and ready to produce fruit, as opposed to waiting for the seed to develop, to go through all of the stages to become mature and be able to produce fruit. So it's a much quicker way of propagating your plants. The plant actually does like to be in an environment that's warm, but not excessively hot. And if it is excessively hot, the benefit of some shade definitely. All right, so let me give you a little bit of a recap on some of the tips about growing the Charapita pepper. One of the things you want to do is definitely, if you can get a plant, get yourself a small plant and go that way. If you can't find the plant, then you can order some of the little Charapita peppers themselves. You can then extract the seeds, plant them. Or you can order a package of seed. There's plenty of sources online. Just search for Charapita pepper, okay? With seeds, they do take quite a while to germinate, so have patience. It can take 30 to 45 days, sometimes even a little bit longer for the actual peppers to begin to germinate. And then it can take 8 months to a year before you actually see a small productive plant. These guys are going on 2 years already. Pretty sure 1.5 to 2 years. I'd have to check my records, but I'm pretty sure we're on year number 2 right now. This is actually now the 2nd season of productivity. And let me tell you, once they begin to produce, it's a pretty good supply. It doesn't really stop much at all. They keep going and going and going. In terms of the heat, they don't like a lot of heat. They don't like incredible direct sun. They do prefer a certain amount of shaded atmosphere, but more of a filtered light situation. They do like to be moist, so make sure you give them water, especially during that hot time of the year. But make sure that the soil filters out, well. It doesn't just stay wet all the time. It has to actually drain well, okay? Make sure that the nutrients are there with a couple of foliar sprays multiple times throughout the year. Make sure that you're giving it not too much nitrogen, okay? And give it plenty of phosphorus and potassium, and use organic fertilizer. As far as pruning, yes, you have to get in there and you have to prune the tree so that you can keep a nice airflow and keep the plant healthy. With respect to insects, the major pest that I have found is the white fly. That's one of the big ones, the white flies. So you definitely want to control white fly, and there's different things you can use. Remember to go organic. Azamax is wonderful, it works well, it's expensive. Nothing like Mycotrol. Mycotrol is a biofungus. It's actually a pesticide, and it's actually a fungus. That's what I meant to say. So that is somewhere like $80 for I think it's a pint or a quart. I can't remember, but it's expensive. You only need a little bit, but it works really, really well. Okay. These here are little clones, and again, clones would be better if you can get a plant and then begin to clone your own. By taking cuttings, you're going to produce the same plant. It's very good to have lots and lots and lots of plants, and by growing them from cuttings, speeds up the whole process, and it gives you a plant that's ready to produce. In the back, I have that I have the 7-gallon plant. This is in the 3-gallon, and then I have the small ones here. As far as the heat, they are hot. They're like little jalapenos, and they're pretty tasty, and they're also known to be very expensive. Can you sell these? Yes, you can sell them. Can you start a little farm and do this for a living? Yes, you can definitely do that. But you need to learn how to grow them. You have to have patience, and you definitely need to have marketing and people that want to buy it. So maybe if you went out to restaurants, once you've got this going, and you could market to the people that run the restaurants, the chefs, and so on. Anyway, I want to say thank you. I hope that I gave you enough information. Please, if you have a question, just leave it, and I'll do my best to answer your question. Thank you once again for visiting my YouTube channel, and I'll bring you more videos about Charapita in the future.